Oh, hey! I'm glad you're here. If this is your first time listening, we talk about a movie with a person who has the profession portrayed in that movie and hopefully learn a little bit about both. We're 9 seasons into VHS, and a big part of what makes each episode special isn't me, it's the guest and their profession. As the podcast has grown, I've had the luxury of speaking to more people with similar jobs, and yet each person's experience in that profession has been unique to them. I feel very lucky for us to have this conversation, and it really goes to some fun places, if I do say so myself, and I did. So let's get right to it. The film is Hollywood Palms, the guest is an actor, and this is VH Us. Hello, and welcome to VHS, the podcast where each episode is about a film and the guest has the experience or profession portrayed in the film. I'm your host, Dirk Marshall, and I would be remiss to not suggest that you find us on Instagram and Twitter at VHS_podcast, as well as our website, vh-us.com, to see original artwork and much more. I'm joined by my co-host, Sarah Marshall. Thank you for being here.
Hey, Dirk. Thanks for having me.
People can find you at Spicy Marshall on Twitter and Instagram, correct?
Yep, that's me.
Fantastic. And we're joined by actor, writer, and producer Patrick Labyorteaux. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure, guys. Real pleasure to be here.
Did I get it right, Labyorteaux?
You know what? You got it so right, it didn't even bump me. Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it.
Great. I'd imagine you've seen many an interviewer go white with fear as they start to approach the long string of letters in your last name as they're like, oh my gosh, how do I...
My official full name is Patrick, wait for it, pause, and then whatever syllables pop out after that. It's real easy for all those, if you wonder, it's 3 syllables, lab or toe. It's just the Cajun part of my family got all up being drunk one night and started adding letters that the Parisians do not appreciate.
Of course, people know you as Kevin from summer school, Ed from ski school, Fester from Three Ninjas, and of course Ram from Heathers. But what some might not know is that you started around Blazing Saddles and Mame opposite Lucille Ball. Is that correct?
Yeah. It was awesome. Even then, I knew it was kind of cool. I think it was the summer of 73. I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I did 2 movies at Warner Brothers. One of them was Mame, and one of them was Blazing Saddles. And Blazing Saddles I was in for a lot more than I end up being in the movie, mainly because Blazing Saddles is a masterpiece. So they edited the film. They kept the best stuff in it. And I had 3 scenes. I played this little kid who, in the church scene, he raises his hand to say, hey, can I be sheriff? And the whole town goes, well, he's big for his age. He's brave. Let him be sheriff. We'll vote him to be sheriff. And my mother takes me aside and says, he's just a child. Then the second one was when they're racing through the town and they grab me and my pet snake, whatever that means. And they tie my snake in a knot. And I go, oh, what have they done to you, pal? And then my final big scene was with Cleavon Little when he's doing his first walkthrough as, the sheriff of Rock Ridge. And he's walking down the street and he sees a bunch of these kids beating up on this little kid, which is me. And he pulls everybody off and he goes, hey, now what's going on here? And I say, we're just playing. And he goes, what kind of game are you playing? And I say, we're playing Welcome the New Sheriff. So I was on the set for a month in the Warner Brothers backlot on Western Street while they were doing everything. I'm in everything. In fact, there's 2 shots you can still see me in. At the very opening of Rock Ridge, there's a kid being drugged by this big, huge sheepdog, and that's me. And then when Cleavon Little comes to town for the first time, gets up on the bandstand before he takes himself hostage, there's a little kid who won't stop looking at the big brass band. I was so fascinated with the band, I kept looking at the band instead of what was going on the stage, and that's me. However, having said all that, the reason I go into all of that is anyone at Warner Brothers who has all these outtakes, please release them on something. I've never seen the work. I've never seen exactly, because back in the day, there was no screenings for outtakes and things like that. So I did that, and then I did Mame with Lucy, and I had no idea. I knew that she was famous for I Love Lucy, and I knew it was on TV, and I knew she had a TV show. I had no idea what a big star she was. I knew the show was older, probably about 2 years old, which was completely wrong. It's more like 20.
Right.
And I would watch an episode the night before and come in the next day and talk to her about it as though she had watched the same episode. And I remember talking to her about the grapes episode where she's stomping the grapes. Mm-hmm. And she says, oh, darling, that was a long time ago. I don't remember if I can tell you exactly what happened. And she loved me because I was this cute little 6-year-old. but all the adults were afraid of her because she was
Yeah.
this massive star. And I mean, and if you watch the movie, God love her, it's, she's way too old for it. She's not a singer, and it's just not. And and every time they shoot her, all of a sudden there's 15 levels of gauze
Yeah.
on the screen to try to soften up her wrinkles. But she gave me a Mickey Mouse watch for Christmas because we celebrated Christmas while we were shooting.
Wow.
And she was just a love. Long stories, sorry.
No, that's great. I just think it's incredible that by the time I saw you in Heathers, which is, I'm guessing the first time I saw you, you'd been in the field for like 15 years.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, just about. Because I started in commercials and print.
Oh, right.
When I was a little kid. In fact, Sarah was talking about the billboard that you saw. I got this job where I went in and it was a print job. And I was a kid, maybe 5 years old. And they showed me the storyboard. And on the storyboard, I looked exactly like the storyboard. So I got the part just basically because I looked exactly like the storyboard. And the storyboard was just a kid smiling. And at the time, you can still see it in Little House. At the time, I had a big gap between my two front teeth. And it was just like the classic 70s Saturday Evening Post type of kid. And so I get this job. It was the easiest job I ever did. They just took a few pictures of me and I was really excited. So like 3 months later, I'm driving down the street and on a billboard, there's the picture they took. There's this big, huge picture of my face. I'm smiling. I'm up there. No one can miss it. And it says above my face, $1,200 can fix this.
Oh.
And it was for a dentist who could fix the gap between my teeth.
No.
That's terrible.
I had no idea. Sadly, my parents did. They never bothered to tell me. But other than that, yeah. So
Jeez.
I've been doing this a long time. And when I started, it really did feel like I don't want to sound too quaint, but it felt like a village because there was really two places. It happened here and in New York, which was like a mythical land of theater actors that we never knew. But commercials happened here. It was the same auditions, the same place. So even a little kid like myself would run into the same audition locations, the same other actors, and it felt like a small, small town. Of course, now, especially like with what we're doing right now and what I'm doing with the school, is that you don't have to be anywhere.
Right.
You don't have to be in Hollywood to be in Hollywood. You can be, you guys are where you guys are. I'm where I am. And whoever's listening to this now, God, could be anywhere in a car somewhere. They could start listening to this in one state and end up in another. So the whole idea is that it's not the same as it was back when I started.
Yeah.
But by the time we were doing Heathers, I think it was the last New World picture that was made by New World Pictures. It was kind of the end of an era and the beginning of another one. I think it started another one.
Well, speaking of in addition to having acted since a very, very young age and all of your credits, which we'll get to, in 2021, I believe you started Working Actors School?
Yeah, obviously we were all stuck inside. And the idea was, I was talking to my wife and it's actually her idea. She goes, look, you've been an actor since you were a kid. And there's not too many people that have the experience of being a child actor, a teen actor, and an adult actor and having success at each level of those. Trust me, I don't want to sound like I'm not bragging or anything, just saying that I worked. I was a working actor, and that was the whole idea of the Working Actors School. And the idea behind it is we can use the technology that we have now to allow anyone, you don't have to live in Hollywood to train in Hollywood. And the idea of it is based on, everyone's familiar with the actor studio and high-end, very interior type of acting work where you go to an acting studio, you are completely safe, you can explore, you can do whatever you need to do to get into a character, you have all of these support, you have all the support around you, and it's wonderful to explore, and I respect that, and I think that absolutely has its place. But the Working Actors School is more of a practical guide. It's like the construction worker's guide to acting, which is, when you're on a set, that same speech that you worked on and did for your studio and had the perfect setup to be emotionally available. Now you're on location. This happens to me. I was on location on an aircraft carrier, and everything that I had rehearsed and practiced in my head was literally blown out of my body when they started launching jets off this aircraft carrier while we were doing the scene. And I've never been around that. I would say that few people have.
Yeah.
The amount of physical force that these jets had, I had no idea what my lines were, let alone who I was or where I was. It was insane. And so you're in these situations as a working actor that you're not in a regular studio. And so what we focus on is from basic, intermediate, and advanced. These are the classes that are like the mainstay. I also do personal coaching if you're working on a scene, or then we have workshops. But the main three set are from, if you've never acted anything, you start in basic and you learn everything you need to know, that so by the end of it, you're able to walk onto any set and be able to perform under the circumstances of a working set where you have lighting, you have marks, you have time constraints, you have other actors that may not be friendly and helpful, or both. There's a whole class dedicated to directors that are not very good, that fight with you, and how to deal with that. And these are all things that, while other acting classes may approach, this whole school is kind of dedicated to that. So it gets you there, it gets you understanding how to, nowadays send in the proper audition. Because now I'm auditioning here. This is where I audition from. And it's completely different. There's no interaction with the people. And so we deal with that. So long answer longer, it's an internet-based school that we do everything over Zoom. And it's real easy to get in and out. We have new classes every month. And I think our next one is starting March 15th for the basic class. I don't know when this is going up, but March 15th in 2022. I wanted to start this based on the idea that people were stuck at home and might as well do something while they're there. And then now that the entire industry has kind of moved towards this as our the basis, I do the same thing. The room back there is my voiceover studio. I do voiceover work. And, I do looping for Netflix and cartoons and stuff like that. And that's all done from here as well. There you go. That's Working Actor School. You can find it at workingactorschool.com.
There it is.
I think that's a really lovely thing to provide, especially at this time. I think people always perform better if they have some skills. And so you're providing something that is different. I wonder if the pandemic hadn't happened, do you think that you would have ever created it?
Probably not, would be the short answer.
Yeah.
I've done a couple projects during the pandemic, but there was nothing going on.
Yeah.
And I guess it did that for a lot of people. It generated a lot of thought about how things can be worked different. Incidentally, I've never felt more safe than when I was on a set during the pandemic. The way that they test everything, the way that everything is broken down into zones. Just going to Ralph's is probably a little bit more sketchy than heading to the set. But I was in class with Nina Foch, and I was at the Groundlings, and I trained in all these different places that are great training. Absolutely wonderful. Get that training if you need it, if you want it, and if you have the time. Nothing wrong with that. However, none of it was based on the idea of what happens when you're actually at the job site.
Yeah, that's great. I never thought about that until I was doing a very small film. And like you said, the actor was not helpful to work with, and I didn't understand what was going on, and the director was inexperienced and didn't know how to even handle that situation. And it was one of the worst experiences and made me not want to ever do anything in that realm again. And I think if I had been prepared for that even being an option, I would have been able to handle it better.
Oh, absolutely. The glamour is at the premiere. There's no glamour on the set.
Yeah.
You may get to do really cool things in the best circumstances. And I've worked in the best circumstances. I worked on Little House with Michael Landon. I've worked on a show like Jag for 10 years where we had money and we had good people. So I've worked in the best situation. And it's still, at that time, it's still a job.
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, you're going to work. In the worst circumstances, it's like the worst dinner party you've ever been with, and you're trapped with these people that you cannot get out of, and your career is based on how well this dinner party goes. And you're like, oh no, this is going to suck.
Well, I'm glad you're providing those skills to people. I think it's very necessary.
Yes, agreed.
Thank you.
Which brings us to the big question. This is a new section on the podcast where we ask people to give us a large topic, a huge important thing to address at the top of the episode. This one comes from Anonymous. It's name a great sick movie, a movie you'd put on if you were sick on the couch.
Oh, there's two of them that I go to endlessly, not just for sick couch, but for any time. Soap Dish and A Fish Called Wanda.
Oh, excellent.
Two of my favorite movies of all time. Soap Dish, because I think we had talked about it briefly, but Soap Dish to me it's such an acting movie. And everything about it is so wonderful. The performances are wonderful. The comedy is wonderful. All the details when we end up in Kevin Kline's apartment, every single photograph is of him alone. And it's just like, I've been to that guy's apartment. I know actors like that. And A Fish Called Wanda, I don't know, man. It just was a movie in my time that when I saw it, when it came out, I was just taken by it. I love Jamie Lee in it. I love John Cleese.
Mm.
Michael Crittenden, who directed it, was one of the old Ealing directors from the old English Ealing comedies and one of his last movies. And it was just, I just loved it. So those are my two. What are your two?
Sarah, do you have one?
Yeah, I think first, if it's a movie, I think The Birdcage I always like to put on because I love that one.
Birdcage is
I
good.
think
Yes.
it always makes me like feel good and laugh, and I think that if it's a show, I put on Twin Peaks a lot because I fall asleep to
Mhm.
it. It's the music, even though it can be a traumatic, wild ride of a movie. For some reason, I've just always put it on and I just fall right asleep. Which, if that's what I'm needing when I'm sick, I would say that. But I do have a time I remember, Dirk, where I was homesick and I asked you for a movie recommendation.
Okay.
And you gave me the worst movie
Oh.
recommendation. To where I was like, this is the most terrible movie I've ever seen. And why would you tell me to watch that? I'm pretty sure I cried even.
Okay.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was Visitor Q, and I was going to make a joke that would be my sick movie. So what happened was there was a period before I started really chasing down titles that I remember from my dad's video store and movies that I enjoyed, and I was just buying films that affected me, and usually they were deeply disturbing and strange films, so my collection really had nothing that you would put on for a comfort watch, and this is before streaming.
Right.
So I had Takahashi Miike's Visitor Q, and so I was like, I don't know, Visitor Q. I was at work at the time. I didn't really think you'd watch it, and
It sure did.
and she did, and it is a very disturbing film full of lots of crazy scenes, and so that
Is
became
it a
the
body horror movie? I'm not familiar with it.
it's just super weird. It's the type of film where it takes a turn and there's a lactating lady shooting breast milk onto a man sitting on the floor under an umbrella in a kitchen. It's that kind of film, you know.
Oh, that old trick.
Yeah, it's in Bonanza, it's in everything. Yeah, it was.
It's a great movie, but it was the wrong recommendation
Right.
for me when I was home
Yeah.
by myself feeling terrible, you
Absolutely.
know?
I would go with Slow Learners from 2015, starring Adam Pally and Sarah Burns. It's a wonderful indie comedy. It has
I like him.
Yeah, they're both great in this movie. And the opening scene, Patrick, if you haven't seen Slow Learners, is one of my favorite scenes in the last, when was it, 2015? So I could say 10 years. It's so funny. It's just this lady on a date with Adam Pally, and he's asking why she doesn't like him, and she's being so blunt, and his face is like, it's really great. I think you'd really enjoy it.
I'll write that down. Slow learners.
Slow Learners. I think it's very interesting, Patrick, that both your films are ensemble films, and the film we're talking about today is also an ensemble film, I think. The film that brings
You're
us
good at this hosting thing.
Oh,
I hadn't
thanks.
put that together, but absolutely, I love those ensembles.
the film that brings us together is Hollywood Palms from 2001. Now, I know this wasn't a first time for you, Patrick. As for the first time for us, you're the co-writer and star of the film.
I had done another movie called National Lampoon's Last Resort.
Right. You
which
wrote that.
I wrote that and I had a little part in it, but that started off. I had done a movie called Ski School,
Yes.
and it was really cold. And so I said to the director, we should do one of these in the Bahamas and call it Scuba School. And he goes, you write it and I'll make it. And so I wrote it and he made it, but it ended up being Last Resort with the Coreys.
Right.
And so it was a different by the time we got to it. But this was the first time that I wrote and produced and starred in something. And it was a pretty great experience, especially with my partner, Dean Cameron, who, you know, from summer school and
Yes.
ski school.
Always
they
great.
came from outer space, everything. Rockula. He's so funny. In fact, watching this movie last night, I laughed my ass off at something I'd never seen before that he does. I was just dying.
Okay, great. We'll get to that for sure. At the time of this recording, you could rent it at your local video store like Movie Madness right here in Portland, Oregon, or stream it on Tubi, which is how we watched it with very questionable ad placement. I also bought the DVD, which is arriving in a few days. The synopsis is set entirely in the Hollywood Palms apartment building and its yard. The movie shows how people there live and interact with each other. They leave out the skunk. I don't know how they do that. I would have worked that in there because the second the movie started, we see one and I'm like, well, this is great. This is delightful. Which brings us to who's involved. Our director is Jeffrey Nachmanoff, and there's a lot of pressure here because you know all these people. Hopefully.
Yeah, you better get their names right.
I
Dirk.
know. Okay. He did he did Traitor with Don Cheadle, some TV films, and Replicas with Keanu Reeves in 2018. Our cinematographer, and please help me with his last name, Alexander Buono?
Yeah, I should be better at this myself.
Oh, phew. Okay, I'm off the hook then. I think it's
You're off the hook, absolutely.
Buono. Bueno or Buono. My apologies to Alexander. It looks great. The film is beautiful.
I called him Alex.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Right.
Mr. Bueno did Clowns, Green Street Hooligans, an Iggy Pop documentary, which I'm going to track down. Our editor is James Fletcher, who did Capital Punishment in 1991, which is an awesome Gary Daniels action joint, Expert Weapon, and then a ton of TV. And then our writers. We got to talk about Patrick, Dean Cameron, and Matt Winston is credited. Did the three of you write this together?
No, and I'm not sure
That's an
where
IMDb
he would be
thing.
credited. That just was probably a typo. He's wonderful and I've been a friend for years, but no, he's not a writer on it.
All right. And let's get to actors, Patrick. As I said, we'll get to a lot of your credits in the structure of our conversation here. Next, we have Dean Cameron, Summer School, Rockula, Ski School 1 and 2, Bad Dreams, and Alf. He's still going strong. He looks great. He's always wonderful. From the second I saw him as Chainsaw in Summer School, he was one of my favorite actors in my dad's video store. I love that you two were friends and wrote things together. I think he's excellent in this film.
Yeah, I got to say, there's a lot of people in this movie, a lot of people from the 80s, a lot of people in the movies you've mentioned where you go, oh, I wonder what happened to that person. With Dean, I always wondered, I just never understood. He's so good.
So good.
It's not like I'm saying, oh, I like him. You know, people should like him. No, he's wonderful. He's wonderful.
Yeah.
And he should be working all the time.
Yeah.
Way more than I should be. And I mean that. And it's not a false modesty. I think he's wonderful. I think he's great.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you both have really excellent comedic timing, but the thing that really sells it to me is you both have this soulful eyes, if that makes sense, the humanity that makes you buy into
I can see it in
character.
Dean, and you know, I'm dead on the inside. It's all an act, but for Dean, I can see it.
Well, you're a great actor,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yeah. And we're pretty goths, so we're dead on the inside too. Next is Paget Brewster. Tons of TV like Criminal Minds, the movies Now You Know, Eulogy, Man of the House, Unaccompanied Minors, and Welcome to Happiness. Paget's amazing and wonderful in this movie as well. Then Judge Reinhold. I mean, I was like, you've got everyone in this thing. He's excellent.
Alyssa Weisberg did the casting, and we can get into the production of it, but just for me to say right now, I was amazed at the cast that we got for this.
Yeah, it's stacked. Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2 and 3, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Santa Claus 1, 2, 3, Vice Versa, which was a favorite, Gremlins, and most importantly, Xandali, which we discussed on this podcast, opposite Nicolas Cage. Next we have Elizabeth.
And don't forget Lost.
Oh yes, Lost. Elizabeth Mitchell, also on Lost. She was in the film Running Scared with Paul Walker, Santa Claus 2 with Judge Reinhold, and Witch Hunt, and then a ton of television. For the sake of time, the rest of the cast we'll address as we go, so let's press play on Hollywood Palms. We start off with credits and a skunk, complete with skunk vision. Sarah, was this your favorite part of the film?
Well, right away when I saw the skunk, I thought, I hope there's skunk vision, and then there sure is. So I was very relieved. But Patrick, I have some skunk questions for you because I've never been on a set or been an actress or anything like that. But I imagine that animal acting adds a whole different element. Was there really a real skunk or was it a fake skunk?
There was absolutely a real skunk in all the scenes that he's moving. Any scene with an actor, I never worked with a real skunk. It was always our skunk puppet. And just the production level, rewatching this movie, I hadn't watched it in maybe 20 years because we had filmed in 2000. As a producer, as a writer, I really wish we had dirtied up the vents that he was climbing through. Those were like the cleanest vents you had ever seen in your entire life. But otherwise, I thought they did a great job with all the skunk unit that they put together to go shoot the skunk and get reactions and stuff.
Yes. Also, Skunk Puppet, my favorite grunge band. Just want to throw that out there. It knocks over a plant. And we see Patrick as Clark. He's getting a call. Maybe it's his agent. I'm not sure. Patrick, have you always had an agent? And also, follow-up question, how many agents do you have?
I've always had an agent.
Yes.
So that's a yes. And right now I have two agencies. One for voiceover at Cunningham, and the other is Metropolitan for theatrical.
Right.
But I've had maybe about 10 different people represent me over my lifetime.
Yeah, my friend Ian, he's also in the biz, and he does stand-up comedy, writing, etc. And he told me 4 different agents, and I was like, that's incredible that you have all these specific, people don't realize that. You just think, oh, you have one, but it's all specific to your different aspects of your job.
Yeah, and it also plays out differently too, where for a guy of my level, Cunningham is the number one voiceover talent agent in the world. And I stumbled into them through a whole other story. And I love it there. And that's the agency that I've been with the longest. They've stayed the same. I love everybody there, but they only do voiceovers and commercials.
Gotcha.
So then I need another agent for theatrical. And then there's another agent for writing, which I don't have a writing agent because I haven't really been pursuing that right now. But other levels, like when you get to a level of these marquee people, then you'll be at an ICM or a CAA or WME. I'm not sure. Maybe they're all one agency at this point. You're with that agency, and then they represent you in literally every area.
Wow.
And I think that for people that don't ever have an agent or haven't had that experience, it doesn't really seem real. You don't understand that dynamic or that relationship. So we only really have what we see in movies, which it's always this kind of terrible relationship at first until the person does something that makes everybody money. But the piece that I didn't realize is that when you have an agent and they get you a role, they continue to get part of that money that you get paid, which I don't know that people always understand that that's how that works and that they continue to get paid for a long period of time. But
they get 10%.
That's a lot.
And yeah, and then there are certain residuals that they don't get residuals for like, let's say for a show like JAG, they get 10% of what I get paid to film it. And then when they rerun that episode on network television, so when you see a rerun on the same network that you saw the original on, they get 10% of that.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then once that's all done and it goes to syndication, they don't get residuals after that.
Okay.
But with big agencies, and again, I think this may have just changed. They had done a thing called a package deal where so a big star like a Tim Allen will go and the agency CAA will be representing the writer and star, and they go to the network and they say, okay, so we're going to package this deal. You'll get the writer and the star and you'll get them for this price. And then the network will pay the agency their cut, and it's not taken out of the actor's salary. So the agency gets a part of the show. That was the way they did it for a long time. That's changing now, but 10%. And then that's just the agent. So then let's say you have a lawyer and you don't pay him by the hour, but you pay him by a percentage of what you make. That's an opportunity. Percentages can range from 5 to 10% for that. And then a publicist is usually 3 to 5%. And then another manager can be from 15 to 20%. So if you're fully loaded and have a manager, a publicist, a lawyer, and an agent, you could literally be looking at 50% of your income going to your team. And sometimes that could be profitable for you. You know, a guy like Tom Cruise, sure. But again, then it's weird because then you're Tom Cruise and it's like, what are they really doing? They're just saying no. All you got to do is pick up your own scripts and pick one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's part of the business and part about what we talk about at the school about, managing your management team.
It would be so important to think about what those relationships are going to be like, because they really can be long term, but you're going into a relationship with these people. They're part of you, they're representing you, and I would think it would be a big decision to pick and then stay with who they are because they become part of your life and your work.
Very much so. And the type of thing where, and I'll use me as an example because I know the story. The idea is an agent tries to get you work. That's obvious. They send you out for parts that they think that you'll have a shot at. And it's like going to Vegas. They're betting on their belief that you're going to do well. Then let's say I auditioned for JAG, it was a guest star part for the pilot. And the director liked me. The director was Don Belisario, who created the show. He was the writer and director. And so he liked me and he liked my character. He liked how it worked with the main guy and wanted to add me as a regular to the show. And so long story, more complicated than this, but in the second season of JAG, I started as a regular on the show. And so now the show runs for 10 years. And so the agent that put me up for that guest star audition is now getting paid for 10 years for basically an email saying, hey, will you see my client? Which, okay, that's the way you work. You roll the dice for those big payoffs. Where it gets difficult for the talent and the agent is, and it worked out very well for me, that's why I'm telling the story, is we did Hollywood Palms, look at me bringing it back to
Very well.
while we were doing JAG. And in order for us to do that, my agent had to negotiate with the producers of JAG to work a schedule out so that I could do both at the same time. And because of that, my agent was really earning the amount of money that they were making off of 10% of my paycheck for this TV show. That worked out great. Other shows where you could be on a show like I was for 10 years, the agent works for that one
Right.
moment. And when you get the part, it never works again for the client,
Mm-hmm.
and they're still getting paid. And like you're saying, Sarah, it's like the relationship with them. You really have to have a good working relationship. I have a great relationship now with my theatrical people. Right now, it's been, very challenging for all the reasons everyone can imagine. And, they're still gung ho. And when I see something that I'm really interested in, they'll go after it. And when we have a win for all of us.
That's excellent. In the film, a man comes to the door and he recognizes Clark as a kid actor and gets the name wrong. Ah, the humbling fan interactions.
That's a direct ripoff from Christmas Vacation.
That's great.
There's a line when they get Clark Griswold's name wrong at the corporate offices. And I stole that and put that in the movie.
That's great.
Oh, Mark, no, Clark. That was directly from Christmas Vacation.
Your profession is so odd because the job is acting, but it happens in a public forum. And so for someone who's been acting since 3, you've experienced something that I've been wanting to talk to someone about, and that is that actors who are lucky enough to keep working reach points in their life and career where they're reevaluated. You go from a child actor to a teen to a 20-something. I don't know how it's all broken down, 18 to 25 or something. But what is that like for someone mentally to go through? Do you go out on an audition and someone goes, oh, you're not this anymore? Or do you just start showing up at different
It's a
things?
hellscape.
Right?
I mean, it's as bad as you can imagine. And I'm a guy. I can't imagine what it's like for a woman.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in Hollywood, because basically it's this creepy idea of, okay, as a girl grows into a woman, when do you sexualize them? It's an ugly question.
Yeah.
For me as an actor, and for any actor, I was very confused by it because of exactly the reason you're asking the question. I had to learn that what was getting me auditions when I was a cute little boy, 8 to 12, isn't going to get me the same. You can't play it the same way. In fact, there's a TV show pilot that never went that I did with Carol Burnett called Eunice, where she played that character from her famous show. And they wanted to do a sitcom based on that character. It was around the same time as Mama's Family, but it was just Eunice. It wasn't Mama's Family. Mm-hmm. And it was for, of all places, the Disney Channel, before they kind of knew what they were going to be. They had this deal with Carol Burnett to do 2 years of this TV show, Eunice. And so I play her son. And watching that now, I see a young actor, 16, 17, still acting like a 12-year-old, because that's what I was doing and not playing the character and not playing the age that I was. And I had to realize at a point that I had to differentiate and protect my psyche by understanding that, okay, so I'm a product. I'm a person, but there's also this product that I'm selling. And it would be like if Diet Coke went from a cola flavor to a lemon lime flavor to an orange soda flavor, mm-hmm. but it was still called Diet Coke. Each time you change, you have to rebrand yourself and reestablish yourself. And so I'm able to look at Little House. I'm able to look at the teenage comedies that I did. And I'm able to look at JAG as the 3 separate areas of rebranding myself from a young kid to a teenager to an adult. And then my next challenge, and I'm waiting for it, you can see it. They can't see it on this. I'm all gray. I'm waiting to be somebody's grandpa on a TV show. Grandpa, somebody somewhere who shows up every now and again. And then I'll be the grandpa or the old dude in the movies or whatever part. But it's definitely, the great thing about acting is that there's always a wide range of ages.
Sure.
But for me to dye my hair, get into the best shape that I've ever been in, and try to pitch myself as a 30-year-old action romance star at 57, why would I do that? I was never that when I was that age anyways. Right. But yet you see people try that all the time, try to hold on to something that they're not anymore. So you have to understand what you're selling, what product you are. And going back to this movie, I don't think that this character ever did. Character, we will find through the movie when we go through it. But I think that one of the things about Clark was that he was always stuck in Little Woody World.
Right.
You probably have to take out and change all of your headshots and photos because maybe you have to take out the pictures of you in half shirts from summer school because you're not going to do that anymore. It just kind of changes how you pitch yourself to people.
That's a great post I'll put up this week on Twitter or Facebook, because that's a great idea, which I never thought of, which is, the history of my headshots, because it is. You see a little kid all the way up through this old grandpa, and it's the same guy, but it's like 5-7 different products.
Right.
Truly.
Yeah.
But it's you. That's crazy. Back in the film, Lewis is shocked that Clark is manager of an apartment building, and we meet Blair, played by Elizabeth Mitchell, and Dexter, played by Jeff Russo from the band Tonic. He did a couple films, Drone Virus, and mostly he's now a composer, ton of television like Fargo.
He's an amazing
Hard,
composer. Oh my God,
right?
he does all the Star Trek stuff.
It's
He's just
crazy.
insanely successful and so talented.
Yeah.
I know I keep talking, but let me set up this movie a little bit.
Sure.
I'll let you run. So Dean and I, this is around Quentin Tarantino time,
Right.
when he was coming up. In fact, I was a producer on Natural Born Killers. For about 3 months, I was the producer on Natural Born Killers,
Whoa.
where Don Murphy, the guy who was the producer of that movie, we had met at a party, and he wanted me to get the script to Christian Slater. So I came on as a producer, and we took it to Christian, and it didn't work out. And it ended up being Natural Born Killers. But around that time, everyone was like looking at, you could get independent movies made. Now this would be a direct to Netflix or a streamer for sure, if it was going to be made at all. But the idea was, Dean and I sat down and we thought, okay, we've got, me and Dean are writers. There's another 2 of our friends that are writers. If instead of writing one full script, if we all wrote a 20-minute short and they gave it to Dean and I, then we could take these 4 stories and meld them into one movie. And so we gave all the different writers the idea that, okay, it has to take place all in one apartment complex in one night, and it has to deal with the rent. You have to get the rent in there. It's all about getting the rent.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, you can do anything knowing that it's got to be like a 2 or 3 person story. So we all started off, I wrote my story, which was the story of the 2 stoner guys. Dean wrote his story, which was the story of Blair and Michael. And then the other 2 guys flaked. And we said, where's your story? And they go, well, we didn't do it. I'm like, well, so Dean and I took our 2 stories, and then I wrote the Clark story, and Dean wrote the Phoebe and Matt story. And then we called the last sequence, which I won't give away, we called the last sequence the Quentin Tarantino Round Table of Death, where all of the stories combined at the end. So that was how the script got made. Dean and I ended up writing the rest of it together, and that's how we ended up writing it. That was the conceit of the movie, that everything take place in one night at this one place. And I am notorious for cribbing my names and relationships. So my character in my story is named Clark, and the guy that I work with is named Lewis. So there's Lewis and Clark.
Nice, yeah.
I was Lewis and Clark. And then Riley and Dexter, the 2 stoners, were from a favorite movie of mine from Disney, the Dexter Riley, who was played by Kurt Russell in a bunch of these Disney movies, right, where the computer who wore tennis shoes and stuff like that. Yeah. So basically then we ended up writing the other 2 stories all to mesh them together.
Well, I loved the way that it was set up and having it be in an apartment complex, because I feel like if you've lived in a time and place like that, where it's a smaller apartment where you really know other people and know things that are going on, you guys did a great job of creating this space that I felt like I was in. Felt like I knew what it was like to be in those different apartments with just different people's personalities. Their decoration styles are so different, and what's going on for them is so different. But that key theme of trying to pay rent was really great. Because that's what happens.
Yeah. A big shout out to the production team, because again, Dean and I wrote the script. I went off to do JAG and I'm acting, and then that took a while to get the movie made. And so when the movie was finally made, I was kind of shuttled in and out based on a schedule that I had to abide by. And it turned out that the fountain in the middle of the courtyard was the most expensive thing that was on set. It was $2,500 a day.
Oh my gosh.
And everyone was working their schedule around myself, who was on the show, and the fountain. There was one day where I was on set at JAG, and we were shooting up at Point Mugu, and we got a chance to shoot on the flight line at Point Mugu Naval Air Station all the time. And so this day we were shooting in front of these F-15s, and they had a line of them, while we were doing a walk and talk. And again, on JAG, like I said, it's a great situation. It was a big, high budget TV show. There must have been 10 F-15s that were walking by, and at 150 million per. That's over $1 billion of set dressing. And then they drive me to the set for that night shoot of Hollywood Palms. And we're racing to finish the big round table of death scene, the very last shots of the nighttime stuff, because the fountain has to wrap at 6:30 and it's $2,500 and everyone's dying because it's $2,500 and it's got out of this $1 billion shot. So everything was really, really bizarre. But what I loved about the production was they found this bungalow section of what was the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. It's no longer there. They've raised it since then. But it was this area where, you know, the big movie stars would rent out these bungalows and just live and party for months on end. And that's where that was. And so they found that place. It was great. And like you said, you know, they did such a great job of making each little apartment feel like those characters.
Yes. And speaking of apartments, we meet Dean as Jeff and Blair. And then we see Paget Brewster as Phoebe, who has a check for him. Lewis, the character that Matt Winston plays, who is in Fight Club, AI, Galaxy Quest, Zodiac. He's checking out the apartment in this scene, and he pushes on the wall, which is very funny.
It's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Right?
And then he measures between the two windows.
Oh my gosh. Was there improv on the set, or was it pretty tight to the script?
No, there was improv, and Matt is an amazing improviser, and he did improvise that. We walked in, and the scene just says he checks out the apartment. He did all of that stuff as far as coming up with pushing against the walls and everything. I met him at the Groundlings, and that's how that
great
happened. So we performed at the Groundlings, and it was just so talented. His dad was Stan Winston, and so he's been in the business forever. And our families became really good friends, and he's a really good guy and just so talented. And again, somebody that doesn't act anymore because he just did Star Trek and a bunch of other stuff, and then he just sort of like, he was tired of being a product.
Yeah, I get it. Then Eric Stoltz calls, which made me think of childhood friends. Like you said, you've known people in the business for quite some time. Is Eric Stoltz one of those people that you knew, or did you just pick a name for the film?
That is one of Dean's best friends from childhood.
Okay.
Eric and him came, I say they came up together, but they actually came down from Santa Barbara. And they were in a roommate situation with Eric, and Anthony Edwards.
Okay.
When they were young kid actors. Not kid actors, but like, you know, teenage actors when they came to Hollywood to be. And so they've been friends forever. But my character, Clark Bridgman, was named for Todd Bridges and Gary Coleman. So Bridgman.
Oh, right.
And again, it's like these little things are all spread throughout, but Todd's a good friend. Jason Bateman has been, you know, he was on Little House. We've known each other. Just people like that. And then other people that you'd never know about. One of the guys that played Spock in Search for Spock. He's a good friend of mine that I still keep in touch with. Named Stephen Manlin.
Sarah, what's the show that we're watching currently on Netflix?
Creating Anna.
Creating Anna. Yeah, Anthony Edwards is on it, and he's fantastic in that show. I highly recommend.
Wait, is that the one where it's about the socialite?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I just started that. So he's in that. That's excellent.
Yeah. He comes in, and he's really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Joel is played by David Packer, who was in RoboCop and Strange Days. He's a stoner who hasn't paid rent in 3 months. Acting's a job that can be inconsistent. And is it stressful not knowing when the next job would come?
The most stressful.
Yeah.
I have to ignore it, which is not a good life advice. David Packer played the guy in the bed. I think maybe you're talking about Craig Ferguson.
Oh, right.
Who played the Riley, the stoner.
Yes, thank you.
But that's okay. I mean, it's flip-flop. But yeah, I mean, as far as insecurity, you literally don't know what's going to happen. So you have to plan.
Right.
And that never really seems to change. It just continues. So you've been acting your whole life. You never really get to a point where you're like, okay, yeah, now everything's good. I know that I'm going to work continuously. I mean, maybe when you had your show that being on JAG and having it go on for so long, but I'm sure that's hard.
It's a great story I tell at the school because that's a perfect example. When I did JAG, I was on it for 10 years, and I keep repeating that because it's so rare that a show goes for that long. So I'm blessed. It's like I hit the lottery.
Yeah.
Yet there's some weird part of me that thinks, oh, I'm going to hit the lottery again.
Right.
Why would I think that? But after JAG, I told myself, okay, I'm not going to be one of those idiot actors who won't audition. I'll audition for anything, and it's going to be fine because I've just had this huge success for 10 years, and I'll just go on to be a working actor. Whenever I want to work, I'll be able to get work. I'll just go on audition, and I'll do the work. And it didn't work out like that. I
Right.
did go out on everything that I could audition for. But what I found is that while JAG was a really good, successful TV show, it was successful from San Bernardino to Connecticut or to Kentucky, and then from New York and California, and no one watched it. I had auditions where people who would audition me, back in the '90s, and now auditioning me, in the mid 2000s, going, "Where have you been? What you been doing?" It's like, well, I was on the show for 10 years ago. Yeah, oh, wow. I never saw it. And so it basically, I had to restart an acting career again.
Geez.
Most of the people that I had auditioned for and gone out for and had relationships with had retired or were no longer doing those jobs anymore. So I was so shocked to find out that you basically have to reinvent and restart for my experience,
Hmm.
that I have to restart that. I saw a quote from Shane Black, the screenwriter, which tells a very similar story. And when I heard that quote from him, basically saying that I got back into it and realized that no one cared about Lethal Weapon, which I just don't understand. That it was like, oh, so it's kind of pervasive everywhere. Everyone is about the new and the next, which I guess is part of the business.
Did you see Josh Rubin's Scare Me?
No.
Okay. Well, as an actor, I highly recommend you check out Josh Rubin's film Scare Me, because he wrote it, I believe, to showcase his strengths as a performer. And it's two people telling each other scary stories, but instead of cutting to footage of what's happening like most horror films would do, it's just the actors acting it out.
Oh, wow.
It's 4 characters, I think, maybe total. They're all excellent. And you see that it's all shot in one location. It's just a really smart move. I think as a performer, you'll find it very interesting. But then he went on to do Werewolves Within, which is an ensemble horror piece. That's a horror. It's a horror comedy. Both of them kind of are. That I also think you would enjoy. And I would love to see you in one of his sort of ensemble pieces he's doing now. I think that you would bring a lot to that.
Thanks. I'll absolutely watch that. I've heard of it. I just haven't seen it.
I always love when Dirk does this, because his way, just because of his childhood of growing up in this video store, his way of really like connecting and relating to people is to recommend movies that will be just for them. So he just did that for you, for you. And I notice him do it all the time. And especially if someone is experiencing something traumatic, sometimes he'll understand that relationship to them and he'll be like, oh, you should watch this movie. But it's sometimes the wrong time to recommend it, because,
I've done that
even
a
though
lot.
they are experiencing it, I'm like, oh yeah, no, you should watch that, but not right now. Once
It's
you've
like
gone
you're the one
through
guy in
it.
Diagon Alley who goes in the back and says, I think this one's for you.
Yeah, that was me, but as a child in a video store, and people were like, is this kid really recommending Scarface? Like, this child. Back in the film, we see a lady in a wig who has a man tied up in a dress. The skunk watches Jeff spit in some takeout. We get some other great moments like Clark practicing an interview / audition in front of a mirror. This is a lovely scene of you performing.
I don't think the collagen injections work, Doctor. No.
Thank you, Barbara. It's a pleasure. Yeah, no, I spent a few years, really, just regrouping. I managed an apartment building for a couple years in Hollywood. Yeah, but there was never any question in my mind about whether or not I was coming back in the movies. It was just a matter of time. I managed a goddamn apartment building for 10 years with backed up toilets and deadbeat renters. Oh, that is precious. No, I managed an apartment building. No. Stinker?
You see him going through the different ideas of how he's going to explain away that he wasn't working for all of those years.
Yeah.
And whether he's going to own up to it or whether he's going to play it off and it was just, I've seen people go through that. I've gone through that my own self, because the idea is that it's wonderful. My God, IMDb is wonderful when, you can look at, oh my God, look at what this guy's done.
Yeah.
And, name any actor and look at it. But then you look at the dates and it's like, well, what about those 8 months? What about those 2 years? Those are all times in between those credits that what are they doing? And they may be in complete depression. They may have been at the low point of their life. They may have been the best part of their life that you don't know. But basically the list of credits that you're given, and what we're talking about today with my list of credits, so much life has happened in between there
Right.
that
Yeah.
you have to figure out how it's going to be presented to the audience, because remember, you're a product.
Right.
And so that product also has, if Diet Coke is going from lemon lime to orange, why? Well, the story is that when they were lemon lime, they found out that people loved the citruses, but that the orange was more popular. So we decided to do more of the orange, as opposed to the fact that they found that the lemon lime killed people and they needed to change their thing before they were sued. And so they're massaging the story. Of course, all of that's made up. Diet Coke has always been Diet Coke, but you get my bizarre rant.
Yeah, well, speaking of things that are popular and killing people, you were in Ghoulies 3, Ghoulies Go to College, and thank you.
Just to be sure, Sid, people don't misunderstand. Not Ghoulies, not Ghoulies 2, Ghoulies 3.
Yes, with Matt Lillard. My question for you
Yeah.
is there a different feeling for, say, starting something like Ghoulies 3, which I'm guessing you were at the beginning of the project to the end of the project, or something similar to that, then when you go on to like a TV show that's already established, like iCarly, is there a different feel for you as a working actor going in, and does it feel as comfortable, or...
Oh, absolutely. When you're doing a movie like Ghoulies, in fact, I love Matt Lillard.
Yes,
Matt
he's
Lillard
great.
was an extra that we fell in love with, me and Jason Scott Lee, who's also an excellent actor.
Mhm.
We would become friends, and we would become friends with Matt. And he was just a featured extra because he was tall and geeky looking as far as the way that they dressed him.
Yeah.
And so we convinced them to give him a SAG card, which they did. And then my dad, who had an agency at the time, like your dad with a video store, my
Yeah.
dad had an agency. My dad signed Matt Lillard, was his first agent.
Whoa.
And he got in this thing on MTV called Skate TV. And then my dad, God bless him, because he was an artist. He really wasn't an agent, but he got into it because my mom, who's an actress, wanted an agent husband so she could get work.
Good job, Mom.
Yeah.
He was such a that's the real story. And so my dad, who's this agent, brought Matt in after the MTV thing. He says, look, Matt, I love you. I can't be your agent anymore. And he goes, what? And he goes, you're going to be really big. You're going to be really famous. I'm not a big enough agent to do what you need to do. So, and I'll help you get a better agent, but I'm not the guy. So there's that story. But when you walk into something at the beginning, like a Ghoulies 3 or with Hollywood Palms, you're basically part of the setup. It's sort of like a dinner party that you're throwing.
Yeah.
And when you're on an iCarly or a guest spot, you're a guest at someone else's dinner. So just like you would feel, you walk in as a guest star, you walk in on some other job with the idea of, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not here to set the tone. I'm just going to do the best work I can, know my lines, and not start up anything. If it's the type of set that is jovial or has a friendliness to it, yeah, you can be friendly. JAG, I made it a very, very specific thing because we had hundreds and hundreds of guest stars. Literally, we did 200 shows, and like every one of them had 5 different guest stars on it. So I made it a point that every time someone was new in the makeup trailer, I would go and introduce myself.
That's great.
Just to let them know, because I know what it's like. You sit down and you don't know anyone. Then you might recognize someone eating a breakfast burrito at the other end, but you're not going to say hi to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt it was helpful to the filming. Again, the working actors aspect of it. It helps if the actor is calm and knows their lines and it's not worried. And JAG was a great set. So it wasn't like I was doing the God's work or anything. It was just like I was just a friendly guy. But I remember wanting to be that guy because so many times you'll go on a set and no one's not coming up to you, but they're just not in the headspace of why welcome a new guy. I've got my lines to learn and I've got other things going on. They're not thinking about it.
I always do that at the farmer's market too, whenever I see somebody new come in, because I do think that people get like really in their head about they have all these things to do, they're in a new space, they're not sure what to expect, and they forget that it's still like a social experience and we're all there to like hang out with each other. So whenever I see somebody new, I just go up and introduce myself and ask them if they have any questions and tell them where the bathroom is, because I'm sure on set too, that's a thing. You go somewhere, you don't know where to go to the bathroom, it's stressful, but you don't want to ask anybody, and so that's always like the first thing I do when I see somebody new come to market.
Yeah.
That's really sweet. And you're exactly right. And the literal reality is there's no difference between me and the guy doing a guest spot. He auditioned, I auditioned. The only difference is that I won the lottery and I got to go back a lot more because of what? Because of luck.
Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, just making community wherever you can is the general vibe.
Yeah, and especially when you're talking about a creative community, when anytime there's been a lot, and I've read a lot, and I'm a big fan of film, and there's a lot of documented stories of it was the worst working environment, but it created the greatest creativity, and it was like an amazing movie after the fact. It still sucked, and so there's really, to be there. So I don't see any benefit in creating a hard-ass type of situation, with a few exceptions, and it's very isolated. If you're the type of character Like I hear the story all the time that Michael Caine freaked out when he saw the Joker for the first time because he didn't allow Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger hadn't allowed himself to be seen by Michael Caine until that first party scene when he comes in. And Michael Caine was just so enraptured with this performance that he kind of lost his lines and just went because of how insane this performance was. And I think that there's a lot to be said for if you're playing a character that is supposed to be distant or not, or scary, or creates fear in some other people, I think there's a good idea to be distant, but not unfriendly, so that when you're doing the work, it's not informed with anything like, well, I know that guy's just joking around 2 minutes ago. There's a way that it's done. I did 2 episodes of the show called Guns of Paradise where I played this autistic kid. And for the entire performance, the first time and only time I've done it, I did the whole method thing where from the moment I got to the set to the moment I was back home, I was playing this autistic character, basically within myself, simple. I didn't bring anything to the set to read. I played in the dirt. I did all these things so that whatever I did on camera, I wasn't caught in myself's head. I was always inside the character's head. And I did that not because I'm a great actor, but because I didn't trust myself to be able to turn it on and off. And so you get to these points where you have tricks, and this was a trick that I used for that. When you're on a guest starring role, I think you behave like you're at someone else's party.
Yeah, I like the dinner party analogy. One dinner party I wouldn't want to go to is Jeff from the movie, because he takes a chopstick and he puts it down the ass crack of the back of his pants.
Nailed the transition.
And it's pretty gross.
That was the scene that I told you about. I was watching this last night and I'd never seen it before. Dean takes the chopsticks, cleans them on his shirt, and then puts them in his ears. And I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. And I was laughing my ass off.
It's so funny. And then when Michael shows up, we get a great back and forth about the aspirin and the flower water. It's so wonderful. And when Jeff shows back up with the female bloating pills and dumps them into the vase.
Have any aspirin?
You got a headache?
For the flowers. If you put a aspirin in the flower water, the flowers keep a little better.
Who told you this one?
Well, it's just one of those things you hear, you know.
I never heard it.
Well.
You sure it works? You do like a controlled study on this?
I don't want any trouble.
I don't even want any trouble. It's a dumb line. This is stupid. We have ibuprofen. Will that work? There's no ibuprofen, buddy, but Blair's feminine pain reliever was out. Maybe that'll help. It's supposed to help with bloating.
Hi.
Hi.
It is so great. Clearly, Jeff is in a very bad place with his relationship, both mentally and emotionally. Patrick, what do you do self-care-wise to navigate all of the things that we've even talked about with your profession? How do you stay grounded? Is it long walks? Is it reading a book?
This is not meant to be a flippant or jovial answer. I don't know if I have done a good job of taking care of myself.
Yeah.
Again, this might take a second, and I apologize for these stories, but having played this character on JAG for 10 years, and again, this was not a method character, and I'm not talking about like how, oh my God, what a great actor I am. But the character I played on JAG was this really nice guy. And the really nice guy part of me is that guy. You see that guy, that's what I'm offering. I can be a really nice guy. But like all people, I have different sides. And part of the different sides I have is the guy that I played in Heathers, which is a really snarky, smarmy type of black comedy, where sometimes I'll say really mean things because I think they're funny. But during the time I was on JAG, I was doing it so much of this nice guy that other part of me just sort of went away. I was wanting to be that character in real life because when people come up to you, and I was recognized the most in my career because of JAG. And when my family and I would go to Disneyland or wherever it would be, people would recognize me from JAG, which is great. And of course, you're going to be nice to them. But over the 10 years that I was doing this, by the time the show was done, there was a part of my personality that I had just ignored for so long that basically I had to reattach myself together to like this snarky, sarcastic part of myself that I think is a part of me that is worthwhile, but had nothing to do with the character Bud Roberts. Bud Roberts was never sarcastic. So I never was during the show, and it didn't really deal well with that reconnection. And also, you're losing so much of yourself because the first thing someone will do if they recognize you is a couple things. One, oh my God, you're Bud from Jag. Oh my God, you're that guy. Oh my God,
What are you
how
in?
do I know you? Okay, so then you're like, well, do you know me from this? Do you know me from that? No. And you're listing off all the things, and they're excited to see you. So they're your friend, but they're not helping you at all. And
Right.
you're going over your whole career, and they're not saying anything as far as, oh yeah, that's it. And so by the time you've run through everything, and I'm back to Shazam in 73, I'm like, Shazam? I'm like, nah. Anyway, I know. It's like you feel let down. And then there's the part of, then the show's over and they recognize you and go, oh man, I watched Jag all the time. You were great. What are you doing now?
Right.
And it feels to me, if you don't have the killer answer of like, well, I'm on this new show now, or I've just finished a Jim Carrey movie. If you have nothing to tell them, that is really difficult. I'm being really honest with you guys because I appreciate the question. But the reality is it can be really difficult because for me, the job is your life. And so if you don't have a job, you don't have a life, which is not healthy at all.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I'm doing the working actor school, because I wasn't working. So I needed to have something that still connected me to being creative. That part of it, and you say, you know, what do I do? And when I was younger, I was a 2 a day at the gym trying to just burn out all that excess anxiety.
Yeah.
There was a time where I drank a lot. There was a time that I ate a lot. And now it's just basically just reestablished personality that I'm familiar with. And that's why you see these actors, but he was so good in that movie. Why is he crazy now? He was always crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just the time in between when you don't know. So part of the school and part of the reality of one of the things, if I'm teaching you from the beginning, the idea of you have got to separate the idea of what you do is not who you are.
Right.
And who you are is not what you do. I'm still working on it.
I think that you creating this working acting school too, though, is a form of self-care for you, because then you always have this thing that you're doing that is for yourself, of course, but it's also for other people. So you nurturing these new actors or people that haven't been on set is something that you can always have to go back to when someone's asking you, what are you doing or what are you doing now? And even if you don't have this other script you're working on or movie you're part of, you have this school that you created that's helping people. So that is in itself.
You guys are really super insightful. It took me a while to figure that out because basically when you're done and all it is a line on an IMDb and, you know, you can watch the project and, you know, watching a project's fun, but it's the knowledge that I gained from each one of these projects that still exists in here.
Yeah.
That what you're saying, it is very therapeutic because it justifies the fact that no, those years of doing that show or that month of doing this movie didn't just go away. It's still here somewhere and it's in my head.
Yeah. And it's a valuable experience you can tap back into. They always use the analogy, your little toolkit that you're building up through experiences. And I know, Sarah, for you too, I mean, you said you don't do anything on a set, but you've been on a lot of shows. It's just yourself. You're playing it yourself. So it's different.
Well, hopefully I'm good at it.
Yeah. But I just think every time you have an experience or something, you learn. For you, Sarah, with live television, getting to know what 2 minutes are and how to fill that time in with meaningful talk. Someone has to be making sounds for the next 2 minutes until commercial break. So it's like you get better at those things every time you have that experience. And if someone hasn't had that experience, being prepared, like you're saying, for working actor school gives them the opportunity to maybe take more of that experience in because they're less stressed out by either the lights or the guy moving a cord over here or something that wasn't happening maybe in their acting class where they only had their friends around, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I did this really low budget movie called Terminal Entry. And in it was one of these Playmates of the Year. And she had gotten the part because she's a Playmate of the Year. And, you know, basically she was there to show a lot of skin because it was the 80s and it was a guns and boobs movie. And so she was the boobs. And we were laying there and the lighting guys were talking and everyone's got their own nomenclature for everything on a set. You know, a clothespin is called a C-47. Why? I have no idea. But there are 10K lights, and then there are scrims, and then the little scrims that are circular, like your pop filter there, are called gobos. And, so this guy, they were lighting the scene, and she was right there. And she starts kind of crying. And I go, what's wrong? She goes, that guy's being so mean to me. And I go, why? And he goes, didn't you just hear him? I go, well, what? And he goes, he said her gobos aren't working. And like, he's talking about my boobs.
Oh, no.
For 10K, her gobos should be working. And he was talking about the gobos that were in front of the 10K lights. And it's like, but she didn't understand the terminology, which, God bless her. Why not? Why would you? But what you're saying is that, yeah, that kind of damage on a set,
Yeah.
if you're aware of what's going on and what people are talking about, you're going to understand it, and you're not going to have to worry about it. And also energy management, emotional management on a set. You don't give your performance in rehearsal. You can't.
Right.
But you have to give enough to let the camera know and the lighting people know what you're going to do. But you got to manage it so that you don't give it all away. I've seen people just give everything away in the rehearsal and then just not have anything for when they started filming.
Right. Yeah, it's a lot of energy management. I mean, you have to navigate it all. Otherwise, you're dead in the eyes like a shark or something. Speaking of sharks, it's time to play a game, Patrick.
Ooh.
In real life, you continue to work. You're in For All Mankind on Apple Plus. You were also in 2018's The Last Sharknado, which means our game today is this a shark in a movie, a lone shark in a movie, or a product on Shark Tank? So there's three options. It's either a shark in a movie, a lone shark in a movie, or a product on Shark Tank. Number one.
Got it.
Bruce.
Oh, shark from Jaws.
Great. It is the shark from Jaws, and it's also a shark in Finding Nemo. So double shark.
All right, fish are our friends. We don't eat our friends.
Number two is Scrub Daddy. Is it a shark in a movie, a lone shark?
Shark,
or a product on
the shark, the one with the product.
product on Shark Tank.
Their most profitable.
Oh my
Shark
gosh,
Tank.
you are correct. It's a super sponge that can resist odors for up to 2 months. Number three, Teddy. Is Teddy a shark in a movie, a lone shark in a movie, or a product on Shark Tank?
Just for 3 out of 3. I don't know. I'm guessing it lone shark, but I wouldn't know.
You're correct. It's John Malkovich in the movie Rounders. Plays Teddy.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go.
Have you ever heard the story that Matt Damon told about that performance?
No.
He says that they were on the set, and there's that one famous line that the Malkovich has as Teddy, who has this over-the-top accent.
Yeah.
And he does the scene, and the first time Matt Damon hears it, the reaction on his face apparently was so obvious that he couldn't get over that Malkovich was doing this insane accent, that when they cut, Malkovich looks at him and goes, hey, they can't all be gems.
That's excellent. Oh, man. Speaking of gems, number four is Squatty Potty. Is that a shark? A lone shark?
I'm gonna go for Shark Tank.
Oh, yeah. It's a personal care company best known for Toilet Stool, which is an unfortunate named product. It's designed to promote easy bowel movements. So there you go, number four. Number five, Robo Shark.
It's got to be a movie, but I don't know which one.
It's Robo Shark. It's a 2015 Bulgarian-Canadian gonzo shark film.
Patrick, you are a shark expert.
Yes.
You're doing so good.
It's not a competition, but no one's ever done better at one of these games.
You've gotten everyone right.
This is incredible. Number six, Mr. Eddie.
Sounds like a lone shark.
Yes, it's Richard Keel's character in 1981 sex comedy So Fine, in which Ryan O'Neal gets his father Jack Warden out of financial troubles by inventing jeans with a see-through butt.
Here's a super personal story.
I'm so excited right now.
I'm so excited.
My wife and I, we have a son, and we were trying to conceive, and there was one attempt that we both believe was the conception event. And we both remember afterwards going downstairs and watching So Fine.
No!
So Fine somehow just sticks out in the oeuvre of films as the movie we watched after we made our son.
I love that.
So there's two things that happen with these episodes, Patrick. I've never met you before, and I was so looking forward to the conversation, and you've already touched on the heart of things for someone who is an actor. I think the struggles, trials, tribulations have all been covered. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, but to play a game that's so random about sharks, which has no relationship to this film, and to have you share that story might be one of my favorite things that's happened
Dirk's so
That's
happy
awesome.
right now.
I'm so happy that So Fine. Wow. Thank you for sharing. And number 7, Chapel. Chapel. Chapul. Is it a Shark Tank product, a loan shark, or a shark in a movie?
I think it was a shark in one of those scientific movies where they built a huge shark.
Oh, that is a great guess, but it's actually an energy bar made of crickets.
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
It's right there in the title. Chapel.
Chapel, yes.
How can it not be crickets?
This one might be a little more on the nose. Number 8 is Sharkenstein.
Oh, definitely a movie.
Yep, in 2016, the Third Reich creates a shark by combining parts of the strongest sharks.
Ooh. How many times have you seen it, Dirk?
I don't know, but I'm writing it down. Right
I've
next
seen
to,
it once.
Scare me
It's
and
not-
slow learners. Sharkenstein.
Number 9, Sykes. Is Sykes a Shark Tank, loan shark, or a shark in a movie?
It's a lone shark, and I want to say 7 Psychopaths, but probably wrong.
Oh, wow. Might be. It's also the loan shark in Oliver and Company, 1988's Disney musical cartoon, voiced by Robert Loggia.
Great.
So it still counts. And number 10, this is the last one, Vintar. Vintar.
I'm going to go with Shark Tank for that glass of wine product.
Ah, well, don't drink out of this because it's a motion-activated toilet light that changes color. Excellent job. You win.
Yay!
There it is.
Best shark game I've ever played.
Yes. Well, we've gone over our time, and I would talk to you.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
Forever. No, this has been truly wonderful. A couple things I wanted to mention about the film before we get to final thoughts is Eric Stoltz saying to you, your character Clark, that he makes cameo appearances in indie films. While he's doing that
Right.
in an indie film I did not miss that. That was lovely. Thank you.
One of our favorites.
Yeah, it's really good.
That was his idea.
Oh, that's great. That's great. When the cops arrive, the young cop is Jay Johnston, that I think plays cop all the time. He's so good for Mr. Show
Yep.
and everything. Seeing him was truly awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed this comedy, and I highly recommend people seek it out. I hope it gets a Blu-ray. I hope it gets put on Netflix so that people can more easily see it. I think every single person is fantastic in it.
Thanks.
Sarah, do you have any final thoughts for Hollywood Palms?
I didn't say in the beginning, it was a first time watch for me, and I just had so much fun with it. I really enjoyed it. I felt like I was in that apartment complex, and
Yeah.
it was really fun. I had a great time. So, way to make a great movie, Patrick.
Yes.
Thank you. I guess my final thought would be we made the movie, we had written the movie, and then I watched it, but I hadn't seen the movie in 20 years. And even though during those years I did the actor thing where it's like, if I'll see it, I'll fast forward to my parts because I want to see, oh, yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. I agree with you, Sarah. When I watched it last night, I watched it from beginning to end as a film, as if I had nothing to do with it. I was really taken aback by how well we created that world
Yes.
of that apartment complex, especially knowing that 2 of those apartments were the same place. And it was just redressed and reused. And I thought they did a great job with the production design, which I had nothing to do with. And Jeffrey did a great job. One of the things I really appreciated with Jeffrey was I'm a big fan of, a great example of it is Let It Ride with Richard Dreyfuss, where you'll start off with the process montage, where it's like what happens in a day for somebody or what happens to set up this one particular place. And with Let It Ride, how they set up the morning of the racetrack. And one of the things that Jeffrey did was from the main credits of Hollywood Palms, they start off with the apartment building and the framing, and that he ends up in the same frame, but everything is completely different. The entire story has happened, and now Lewis is controlling the apartment and running it, and there with the keys, and everything is started. He just did a really great job of bookending the beginning and the ending.
Yes.
And a lot of times with lower budget movies, you just don't have the time or the energy because so many things can go wrong that you could lose one of those shots and you just don't get it. That, again, I'm just commiserating with you, Sarah, the idea. Yeah, I really thought that they did a great job of making that apartment complex feel like a real place.
Yes. That brings us to the end. These are questions just about yourself and your profession. So,
Okay.
first one, what is a good day like for you as an actor?
You're doing something that you're extremely scared about pulling off. And at the end of the day, having realized that you did it the best you could and that it was got on film, that you've accomplished it.
That's great. And what is a bad day like?
nothing is going the way you anticipated, and I'm unable to make the adjustments to make it any better. And it just ends up that I have to end up having a day where I look at it, and I still see performances, and I look at different things in certain movies where I look at it and go, that was just so, I did it so wrong. And it's not good, and I can't blame anyone but myself.
I would love to see, I don't know if it would be for YouTube or something, but you wearing the same outfits and doing scenes from the films that you were in where you were like, I've got it now. I didn't have it then, but here's Ram from Heathers, and you're in the half shirt, and you're doing the scene. Just the idea of an actor being like, wait, I was wrong previously 30 years ago, but now I've got it.
That's a great idea.
Any advice? This is going to be easy, I think, for someone interested in acting. I set you up here.
Why, yes, Dirk. I would recommend going to workingactorsschool.com.
Yes.
Not only can you find autographed photos there for sale for your grandma, girlfriend, or a significant other, but you'll find really reasonably priced acting courses that will teach you how to be an actor on the working set from beginning to end.
Oh,
You're so good.
you're a professional. I love it. This brings us to my final question, as I've got to get this fountain back to the rental facility. And it's my favorite question. Patrick, what are your dreams like?
Oh, yeah, I like this question. And you're talking about real dreams.
Yeah.
They're usually informed in what Sarah was saying, which I was terrified of, what I'm watching as I fall asleep. So I will dream myself into whatever movie is on or whatever is going on in the background. And I have very heroic dreams if I'm watching a Marvel movie. And so I try to stay away from the horror films when I'm falling asleep.
Sure. You wouldn't put Candyman on like we would, but yes, that makes sense.
I'm really glad that doesn't happen to me because I would have terrifying dreams, which is not.
You
it doesn't-
do
my
have
brain doesn't
terrifying
work
dreams.
that way. I guess that's why.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Patrick, for being here and for introducing us to Hollywood Palms. I would not have seen this film, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I'm so glad. Thank you. Because like I said, I hadn't actually watched it as an exercise of just watching it as a film.
Yeah.
And when I did watch it, again, 20 years after, I was so close to it that all I saw were the mistakes. And so this was a great exercise and just a real fun ride back through that. So thank you.
Awesome. Again, Working Actors School is a great destination for classes, workshops, private coaching. It's workingactorsschool.com. People can find you P_LABYORTEAUX, if anyone's keeping track,
Right.
on Twitter. And please do. Sarah Marshall, thank you for being here for another wonderful episode.
Thanks for having me back.
People can find you on Instagram and Twitter, Spicy Marshall, and on your podcast, The Meaningful Marketplace. How's that going?
Going good.
Good.
We're on episode 107. So if people want to listen along, we just did one about the fancy food show. So if you're interested in what a food show is like, give a listen.
Yeah. As always, I'm Dirk Marshall, and this has been VHS. Until next time, please wash your chopsticks.